60% of our body is made up of water. Apart from water, our body consists of various chemical substances like proteins, fats, sugars, and DNA. But here is the intriguing part. None of these molecules are alive, and yet we, who are entirely made of these non-living molecules, are alive. So what exactly is life? Here is another question. Each of our cells is alive. But beyond that, we also say that we, as a whole, are alive. Are these two the same? If so, when a person dies, do all the cells in his body die at the same moment? The answer is no. Even after death, some of the person's organs and cells remain alive for a while. That is precisely why organ transplantation is possible. In fact, even 24 hours after death, there are still some living cells in the body. When the body is processed for burial or cremation within that time, we do not usually think about the fact that some of its cells are still alive. Here is yet another question. We have successfully created bacteria and other unicellular organisms in the lab. We have even cloned animals. Scientists are experimenting with artificial wombs to grow babies outside the human body. And yet, we still say that we have never truly created life artificially. So, what exactly is the difference between creating an organism and creating life? The question, what is life, is vast. But in this video, we will explore it through three perspectives. At what point do we say that something made of non-living molecules has life? Is the life of an individual cell the same as the life of a person? And finally, even though we have artificially created living organisms, why have we not yet been able to create life itself? By seeking answers to these three questions, this video aims to challenge your understanding and make you think deeply about what life truly is. Hi friends, welcome to a new video from Science Simplified for All. For the past 15 years, scientists have been creating synthetic living organisms. Yet, the question remains, why can't we create life from scratch? In 2010, under the leadership of John Craig Venter, scientists successfully created synthetic bacteria in the lab for the first time. They used a method called the top-down approach. In this process, they chemically synthesized an entire bacterial genome from scratch. The DNA was built nucleotide by nucleotide in the lab without using any pre-existing biological DNA. Once the full genome was assembled, they took a naturally existing bacterial cell. They then completely removed its original DNA and replaced it with this entirely synthetic DNA. Once the modified bacterium started multiplying, all new bacterial cells that formed were built entirely based on the synthetic DNA's instructions. Even the proteins and cellular structures inside these new bacteria were made according to the artificial genome, proving that a fully functional, self-replicating organism could be controlled by lab-made DNA. This means scientists successfully created a completely new species of bacteria in the lab, one that never existed in nature before. Similar experiments have been conducted in other studies as well. However, there is one key point to note. Even though the new bacteria that formed after multiplication were built entirely according to the synthetic DNA, the very first bacterial cell used in this experiment was not lab-made. It was originally a naturally existing living cell. This means that while this experiment allowed scientists to create an entirely new type of living bacteria, it does not mean that we created life from scratch using only non-living materials. The real challenge now is this. Can we create an entire cell from scratch using only synthetic molecules? This is known as the bottom-up approach. Scientists have made progress in this area too. They have successfully created artificial cell membranes and even synthetic cellular structures like ribosomes. Researchers have also built protocells, artificial cell-like structures that can perform some of the basic functions of a living cell, including energy production. But despite these advancements, synthetic protocells still cannot perform all the complex functions of a real cell. Most importantly, they cannot self-replicate like natural living cells. That is why, even with major progress in synthetic biology, we still cannot say that we have fully created life artificially. Now, the next question we need to explore is this. What exactly do we mean when we say a cell is alive? We know that all living organisms on Earth are made up of cells. Some organisms consist of many cells, while others, like bacteria, are single-celled. In short, the cell is the fundamental unit of life. Even though cells are microscopic, they are incredibly complex systems. Even the simplest living cell contains thousands of different types of molecules. One of the most abundant is water, making up about 60% of the cell's total content. After water, the most common molecules are proteins. A single cell contains thousands of different proteins, along with fats, sugars, DNA, RNA, and many other biomolecules. But here is an important point. All of these are just chemicals. Individually, none of them are alive. And yet, when they come together in the right way, they form a living cell. So what does it actually mean for something to be alive? To understand this, imagine two completely identical cells. Both contain the exact same molecules in the same proportions. But one is alive and the other is dead. So what exactly makes the difference? The answer lies in biochemical activity. In a living cell, thousands of chemical reactions take place simultaneously. In a dead cell, those reactions have stopped. Now one may wonder, if both cells contain the same molecules, why is there a difference in biochemical activity? To understand this better, let us take an analogy. Imagine two identical engines. Both have the same components, the same fuel, the same oil, the same coolant. Everything is intact. But one engine is running, the other is not. The only difference? One has an active flow of energy, while the other does not. The same is true for a living cell. Energy production, energy transport, and energy usage are among a cell's most fundamental processes. A cell constantly produces energy, and most of it is used in various chemical reactions within the cell. Some of these reactions, in turn, support energy production, while others help maintain the cell's health. Many of these reactions are interdependent, forming a self-sustaining cycle where energy production and biochemical activity support each other. If any one link in this cycle breaks, the entire process collapses, and the cell dies. This situation is similar to our engine analogy from earlier. For an engine to function, many supporting systems need to work together. The fuel pump must deliver fuel. The oil pump must circulate oil. The valves must operate correctly, and so on. All these systems are powered by the energy from the engine. If any one of these systems fails, the engine will stop. And if the engine stops, all these systems will stop. This means that the engine and all its supporting systems are interdependent. The synchronous operation of all these systems is what differentiates a running engine from a stopped engine. Similarly, the synchronous operation of all biochemical activities within a living cell is what differentiates it from a dead cell. But in an engine, all these systems are mechanically linked. So, when you turn the key to start the engine, everything starts at once. However, in a cell, starting all biochemical processes at once is not that easy. Since these processes are interdependent, trying to start one reaction at a time simply will not work. The entire network of biochemical reactions needs to start simultaneously for the cell to function. That is why, even if we build a cell with all the necessary biomolecules, initiating all the biochemical reactions at once remains an enormous challenge. This is one of the major reasons why we have not yet been able to create a 100% synthetic living cell from non-living materials. But this does not mean it is impossible. In fact, scientists have already managed to partially restart some biochemical processes in dead cells. However, we still have not been able to restart all reactions at once to make a cell self-sustaining again, but we are slowly moving toward that goal. Earlier, we defined a living cell as one where all biochemical processes are interconnected and where a continuous flow of energy is maintained. To help understand this, we used an engine as an analogy, a system where multiple processes work together with a steady energy supply. This brings up an interesting question. If an engine has multiple interdependent systems and a continuous energy flow, why don't we consider it alive? The reason is that there are specific characteristics that distinguish living organisms from non-living systems. One of the most important characteristics is homeostasis. A living cell must regulate its internal chemical environment to sustain life. Every cell is surrounded by a cell membrane, which controls the movement of molecules in and out. Essential molecules like glucose and oxygen must enter the cell, while waste products like carbon dioxide must be expelled. For this, the membrane has to be selectively permeable, allowing only necessary molecules while blocking harmful ones. This ability to maintain a stable internal environment despite changes in the surroundings is called homeostasis, and it requires a constant supply of energy. Another key characteristic of life is energy production. As we discussed earlier, a cell must continuously generate, distribute, and use energy. This is one area where cells and engines have some similarities. Both require a steady energy flow to function. The next unique feature of life is the ability to repair damage. A living cell is constantly undergoing chemical reactions, and during this process, damage naturally occurs to its molecules and structures. However, cells have built-in repair mechanisms that actively fix damaged proteins, DNA, and membranes to maintain function. This repair process also requires energy. Another key characteristic of life is responsiveness to the environment. If there are changes in temperature, nutrient levels, or external signals, a living cell adjusts its internal biochemical processes accordingly. The most defining feature of all living things is reproduction. A cell can divide and create new cells, ensuring the continuation of life. So, for something to be considered alive, it must be able to maintain homeostasis, produce energy, repair damage, respond to environmental changes, and reproduce. These abilities are what separate living organisms from non-living objects. All of these functions are driven by continuous biochemical reactions, and a significant portion of the energy produced by the cell is used to sustain these processes. When all of these biochemical reactions are running and self-sustaining, we say that the cell is alive, and when that is not happening, the cell is dead. Earlier, we discussed the example of two chemically identical cells, one alive and one dead. But it is important to note that once a cell loses life, it can no longer maintain its internal chemical structure the same as a living cell. A dead cell loses its ability to control the movement of molecules across its membrane. It can no longer regulate the transport of essential substances or remove waste. It also cannot repair any molecular damage that occurs. For a cell to maintain its structure, all of its biochemical processes must function continuously. If these processes stop, the cell begins to degrade rapidly, leading to irreversible changes. This means that a dead cell cannot retain the same chemical structure as a living cell. The moment life ceases, molecular damage and breakdown begin. This is also why reviving a dead cell is practically impossible. The biochemical reactions that sustain life function as an interconnected chain, and once that chain is completely broken, the irreversible changes that follow make it impossible to restart the system. So far, we have been talking about the life of a single cell, but in multicellular organisms, many cells come together to form organs. Within an organ, most cells are interdependent. That means an organ can only be considered alive if the majority of its cells are still functioning. Only a living organ can be transplanted into another person. That is, even after a person dies, many of their organs and cells remain alive for some time. If these organs are transplanted into a living person within that window, they can continue functioning for years. This means that even though a person has died, many parts of their body can still be biologically alive. But this raises an important question. Is the life of individual cells, the life of organs, and the life of a person all the same? Cells are individually alive. When many living cells work together, they form a living organ. When multiple organs function together, they create biological systems like the circulatory system, digestive system, respiratory system, and nervous system. These systems are interdependent. When all these systems work harmoniously, we say a person is alive. Two of the most critical organs in this system are the heart and brain. When their functions stop, we say a person has died. However, in many countries, brain death is considered the official definition of death. But even after brain death has happened, modern medicine can keep the body functioning for some time using medical instruments like ventilators. In these cases, the rest of the body can be literally 100% alive, even though the brain is considered dead. Moreover, brain death does not necessarily mean that every brain cell has died, only that its functions have ceased. So this brings us to a much deeper question. Where exactly does life exist? Is it in the cells, in the organs, or just in the brain? Through this video, we explored the differences between a living and a non-living cell. We saw that a cell is considered alive when numerous biochemical reactions function together in an interconnected and self-sustaining manner. We also examined the distinction between the life of a single cell and the life of an entire organism. A person is considered alive when all the biological systems in their body function together. Even after a person is declared dead due to brain death, many of their cells and organs, or even the entire body, can remain alive for some time. In short, what we call life is nothing but a collection of interdependent biochemical and physical processes. When these processes occur within a cell, we call it cellular life. When they occur across an entire body, we call it the life of an organism. The cessation of these biochemical and physical processes is what we define as death. When this occurs at the cellular level, it is cell death. When it happens across the body, it is the death of an individual. Life is not something that moves in and out of a cell or a body. It is simply a process happening within. So, what do you think life really is? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share. For more videos like this, subscribe to this channel and enable the bell icon. Thank you.